Fetchlands are broken, everybody knows that, and so are duels and shocks. But have you seen the prices on those cards? Mana bases in Commander can get absurdly expensive if you play 3 or more colors. But do you know what isn't expensive? A good old basic forest. And in a monocolored deck, a basic land might just be the best land you could play anyways. Now, monocolored commanders restrict your available card pool quite a bit. Personally, I don't mind that, as restriction can breed creativity, and oftentimes you end up with a more synergy-driven deck rather than a good stuff pile. Also, thanks to more forgiving mana requirements, the price tag for monocolored land bases is pretty negligible. I recently went on a little treasure cruise where I looked at Magic's oldest sets, and I found some incredible payoffs that make me believe you can build a more than solid mono green deck based on a basic forest theme. So sit back, relax, and enjoy. Let's talk about the most recent additions to this archetype from Modern Horizons 3. Winter Moon is a 2-mana artifact. Players can't untap more than one non-basic land during their untap steps. This is of course very reminiscent of Winter Orb, but what is so great about Winter Moon is, while it should be almost as effective at slowing down your opponents, it does not affect you at all if you play only basic forests without any further assistance. Flare of Cultivation is another awesome addition to this archetype. It is a 3-mana sorcery, but it is also one of those infamous free spells from Modern Horizons 3, because instead of paying 3 mana, you can also sacrifice a non-token green creature, and the effect: search your library for up to 2 basic land cards, reveal those cards, put one onto the battlefield tapped and the other into your hand. So a bit of a Kodama's Reach, if you will, but you can cast it for free. Going down the timeline of Magic, let's talk about a card that doubles your mana. Gauntlet of Power is a 5-mana artifact. As it comes into play, you choose a color. All creatures, and yes, that includes your opponent's creatures, of the chosen color get +1/+1. And also, whenever a basic land is tapped for mana of the chosen color, its controller adds 1 mana of that color to his or her mana pool. And yes, that also includes your opponents. If you choose green, all your green creatures will get +1/+1. That's nice and all, but more importantly, all your basic forests will tap for 2 green mana. As you will be playing a deck dedicated to basic lands, you should definitely be the one that profits the most off of this effect. Early Harvest is a 3-mana instant that makes it so target player untaps all basic lands he or she controls. Similarly to Gauntlet of Power, this serves as a way to somewhat double up your mana, but of course it is only once, but it is at instant speed for 3 mana and no one else gets to benefit off of it, so this might be a worthy inclusion in all of these decks. Very similarly, Llanowar Druid is a 2-mana 1/2. It's an elf that you can tap and sacrifice to untap all forests. Now this is symmetrical again, but if you do this during your main phase, I don't think your opponents should be able to do that much on average. You, on the other hand, can play a ritual-like effect on turn 2 that will ramp you for 5-6 mana later on in the game, which is very nice. But you know what is better than doubling your mana? It's tripling your mana. So let's look at Virtue of Strength. For 7 mana, you get an enchantment, but it also has a nice little adventure staple to it, because for 1 green at sorcery speed, you get to return target creature or land from your graveyard to your hand. The actual effect of the card: if you tap a basic land for mana, it produces 3 times as much of that mana instead. This is very reminiscent of Nyxbloom Ancient, which is a card that goes for $25. Virtue of Strength, on the other hand, $4. Next in line is a Fog, a 5-mana Fog. Now usually, Fogs cost somewhere between 1 and 3 mana, so what are we getting for this high price of 5? Well, apart from preventing all combat damage that would be dealt this turn, which is what Fogs always do, you get to search your library for up to X basic land cards, where X is the number of creatures attacking you. Put those cards onto the battlefield tapped, then shuffle. I'd say this is pretty worthwhile to include. If you have just one person who goes wide, it should be easy for you to get something along the lines of 3 to, well, really 7 or 10 basic lands in a game of Commander, just from one Jaheira's Respite. Let's talk about 2 cards that look somewhat like combo pieces at first glance. Rites of Spring is a 2-mana sorcery. You get to discard any number of cards from your hand, and then search your library for that many basic land cards. Reveal those cards and put them into your hand. In a normal deck, this just ensures that you always have enough basics, maybe to hit multiple land drops per turn. In the deck that I am playing, this will serve another function. Scouting Trek is a 2-mana sorcery. Search your library for any number of basic lands, reveal them, and set them aside. Shuffle your library, then put those cards on top of it in any order. This card makes me think mainly of one card, and that is Cultivator Colossus, a 7-mana XX. It has trample, its power and toughness are equal to the number of lands you control, and when this creature enters, you may put a land card from your hand onto the battlefield tapped. If you do, you draw a card and repeat this process. Now this 2-card combo means if you have just one basic in hand and have previously set up the Scouting Trek, you can get literally every single land in your deck. Put it on top of your library, and if you resolve a Cultivator Colossus, you will put all of them into play, meaning for the rest of the game, you will not draw a single land. Before we get to the card that inspired me to make this video, let's talk about 2 4-mana enchantments. Primal Order. For 2 and 2 green, you get an enchantment that reads during each player's upkeep, Primal Order deals damage to that player equal to the amount of non-basic lands they control. This won't be super effective in every pod, but if you regularly have people who play 3 or 4 or 5 color decks, Primal Order starts hitting very hard very quickly. Rowan, on the other hand, is a card advantage engine. Also, for 2 and 2 green, you get an enchantment that reads during your draw phase, you reveal the first card you draw to all players. If that card is a basic land, you draw a card. Now, some people might be scared of giving information to all your opponents by revealing the first card you draw each turn. But really, if you are a deck that is trying to curve out and play at sorcery speed for the most part, most of the time you're giving your opponents all the information anyways. Also, if you draw cards later on, that information will still be hidden. It is really only that first card that you're showing to everyone. Last but not least, let's talk about Gaia's Touch. It is an enchantment from the dark, and it has never seen a reprint. For 2 green, you get an enchantment that has an activated ability that costs 0 that reads, you may put a basic forest card from your hand onto the battlefield. Activate only as a sorcery and only once each turn. But this enchantment has another nice bonus because you can sacrifice it to add 2 green mana to your mana pool. This means if you run out of basic forests to ramp with Gaia's Touch, you can sacrifice it and use it as a ritual to cast the next big thing you have in your hand. Gaia's Touch, even though it has never seen a reprint, is only $2.70 where I live. I genuinely believe that this card is enough for you to at least think about and investigate into a mono green forest only deck, as the power level is high enough to completely turn games upside down. Now that we've talked about the best payoffs for this strategy, let's look at the viable commanders. First is Patron of the Orochi, an 8-mana 7/7 spirit, but you can get a discount by sacrificing a snake because it has Snake Offering. Now that is of course a very fringe mechanic, so let's quickly go over it. You may play Patron of the Orochi at any time, that means at instant speed, by sacrificing a snake and paying the difference in mana cost between the snake and Patron of the Orochi. That means if you have a 4 CMC snake that has 2 generic, 2 green as mana cost, then Patron of the Orochi would be a 4 generic instant speed 7/7. That alone, of course, is not good enough. What we desire is its ability, because for just tapping it, you get to untap all forests and all green creatures, with the caveat that you can play this ability only once each turn. I think in Commanders there's tons of way you can break this, abuse this by flickering it and giving it haste. That business is for you to figure out, because I will focus on a different commander. Another very degenerate looking commander is Sasaya Orochi's Ascendant, a 3-mana 2/3 that has an activated ability where you reveal your hand. If you then have 7 or more lands in your hand, flip Sasaya Orochi Ascendant, and then it turns into what we actually want. namely Sasaya's Essence, an enchantment. Whenever a land you control is tapped for mana, add 1 mana of that type to your mana pool for each other land you control with the same name. Now, if your land base consists of only basic forests, they will all have the same name, meaning very quickly your mana situation can get out of hand. If you have 6 basic forests, each basic forest will tap for 6 mana, and I genuinely believe that if you have just one generic card advantage engine on board, once you flip Sasaya's Essence, I think the game just ends. I also briefly thought about Titania Nature's Force as a potential commander. It is a 6 mana 6/6 elemental. You may play forests from your graveyard, and whenever a forest you control enters, create a 5/3 green elemental creature token. Should an elemental you control die, you mill 3 cards. While this is a very powerful effect, Titania has kind of a landfall ability, even though it's not templated as such, and landfall combines best with extra land drops. And not only are those cards quite expensive, at least the good ones, I'm also kind of tired of seeing them all the time. I feel like for almost every green deck, those are the cards you should go for, and I wanted to try something different. That is why I ended up choosing 6 as my commander. I have learned that combo-based approaches aren't the type of gameplay me and my playgroup enjoy as much, and 6 promises a more grindy gameplay pattern. 6 is a 2/4, it has reach, and whenever 6 attacks, you mill 3 cards. You may put a land card from among them into your hand, and as long as it's your turn, non-land permanent cards in your graveyard have retrace. Now, retrace means you may cast permanent cards from your graveyard by discarding a land card from your hand in addition to paying any other costs. This means every basic land you draw in the late game, if you have 6 on the board, turns into the best permanent card you have in your graveyard. In this last part of the video, I want to talk about the supporting cast of a 6 deck, beginning with an assortment of cards that goes into any basic forest land deck, no matter what you choose as your commander. At least that's what I believe, and that is the Explore package. Explore is a mechanic from Ixalan where you reveal the top card of your library, and if it's a land, you get to put it in your hand. If it's not, you get to put a +1/+1 counter on the creature that explored, and then decide if you want to put the card back on top or into your graveyard. So for Ren 6, if you put it into your graveyard, that might as well just draw a card, because you'll have basic lands for the most part and then just play it at a later point. The best cards I could find are Jadelight Ranger. You might know her from Standard, 3 mana 2/1. When she enters, she explores twice. That's pretty good, even in Commander I would say. Sometimes it just draws you 2 cards, and even if it doesn't actually draw you cards, getting to manipulate your graveyard is supremely powerful for 6 decks, and it's nice that we get to do it on a permanent. Jadelight Spelunker is a 1/X, a 1/1, and it simply explores X times when it enters the battlefield. So early on, you might just play it, you might jump with it, and then later on, using 6's ability, you can just play it from your graveyard, and it might draw you 5 basics that you can use to then play more cards from your graveyard. Topography Tracker is a 3 mana 2/2. When it enters, you create a map token, and a map token is just an artifact that for 1 and tap lets a creature explore. Additionally, if a creature you control would explore, instead it explores, and then it explores again, doubling up all your explore triggers. And Twist and Turns is a 1 mana enchantment. If it enters, target creature you control explores, but additionally, if a creature you control would explore, instead you scry 1, then that creature explores. So you want to play this if you already have a creature on the battlefield. It is rarely a turn 1 play, I would say. Unfortunately, you don't get to keep this effect around forever, because when a land enters the battlefield under your control, if you have 7 or more lands, transform Twists and Turns. And it is not a maze, so you will end up with the Mycoid Maze, a land that taps for green or for 4 and tap. You get to look at the top 4 cards of your library. You may reveal a creature card from among them, Put that card into your hand and the rest on the bottom of your library in random order. Now, all of this wouldn't be enough to call it a package and a mechanic that makes a dent on any deck because it's just 4 cards, but I have a last card that I think severely impacts the game when it enters, and that is Path of Discovery, a 4-mana enchantment. Whenever any creature you control enters, whether it be a normal creature or a token creature, it explores. And that in a 6 deck means that every creature has the chance of just drawing you a card or manipulating your graveyard. Now those cards I think go into any deck, whether you choose Sasaya or Six or any other green commander that wants to draw a lot of basic lands. But I also wanted to talk about cards that I think are specifically good with Six as your commander. Well, next to the extra land drop cards that you see in green in almost every deck, there's another category of cards that you also see quite often, and that is cards that let you play lands from your graveyard. I chose Ramunap Excavator as an example. It is a 3-mana 2/3 that simply reads, you may play land cards from your graveyard. This makes it so you can use your basic lands to play permanents from your graveyard. It might just be a Ramunap Excavator, and then play that land from your graveyard so you get extra value out of it. Similarly, Undergrowth Recon is a 3-mana enchantment. At the beginning of your upkeep, return target land from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped. Now this is better and worse depending on the situation. The nice thing of course is this does not count towards your 1 land drop per turn. Unfortunately it does enter tap, but nonetheless in a 6 deck, this is a supremely powerful effect. Mana Bond is a wonderful enchantment from Exodus. It reads, at the beginning of your end step, you may reveal your hand and put every single land card from it onto the battlefield. The downside is if you do, you have to discard your hand. Well, it would be a shame to discard your hand if it wasn't for Six as your commander, because you can simply use every basic land you draw to then replay all the cards you discarded in the first place. This is one of those effects that can just start off a game and completely change how it plays out. I believe every time you cast this turn 1, you will become the public enemy number 1. What's interesting is this is not an instant or a sorcery, this is an enchantment. So if later on in the game you draw a bunch of cards, you can still play out every card you draw that isn't a land, and at the beginning of your end step, you just put the rest of the hand, aka only the lands that are left, onto the battlefield. Very powerful, and I was very surprised to see that this is only $5. Let's talk about some creatures next. Groundskeeper is a 1-mana 1/1 human druid that has the ability to return target basic land you control from your graveyard to your hand for 2 mana. In any other deck, I would say this is pretty mediocre and meaningless. In a 6 deck, where every basic land in your hand is potentially the best card in your graveyard, this is an A+ effect. Multani, Yavimaya's avatar, is a 6-mana 0/0. It's an elemental avatar that has reach and trample. Multani gets +1/+1 for each land you control and each land in your graveyard. For 2, 1 in a green, and returning 2 lands you control to their owner's hand, you get to return Multani from your graveyard to your hand. What's nice about this is, again, you have to think with the mindset that every basic land is the best card in your graveyard. So should Multani end up in your graveyard, you have a nice way to get basic lands back into your hand, and subsequently discard them to play a card from your graveyard. Another card from a more recent set that I think makes the cut is Altanak the Thrice Called, a 7-mana 9/9 insect beast. It has trample. Whenever it becomes the target of a spell or ability an opponent controls, you get to draw a card. And most importantly, for 2 mana and discarding Altanak the Thrice Called, you get to return target land card from your graveyard to the battlefield. The way this works, of course, is you will play your 6, you will get some stuff back by discarding land cards, and then Altanak can work as a ramp spell that uses the previously discarded forest, puts it back into play, places itself in the graveyard, and is thus a nice, decent card to play later on should you have a lot of mana and want a big creature for your 6. Lastly, 2 artifacts. Lava Spur Boots stands as a representative for artifacts that give your creatures haste. While goldfishing, I oftentimes found myself in a situation where I had a Llanowar Druid in my graveyard, and had I the ability to give it haste, I could completely pop off during my turn. Any creature that sacrifices itself on an activated ability that also requires it to tap is really appreciative of a permanent based haste giver. The last card I want to talk about is Storm Cauldron, a 5 mana artifact. It reads, each player may play an additional land during each of their turns. So far, so normal. But whenever a land is tapped for mana, return it to its owner's hand. I've said it before, having basic lands in your hand gives you a lot of flexibility for 6. And not only does this make it so you can have extra land drops if you want them, it also gives you that flexibility of having basic forests in your hand, but tertiary, your opponents will have to be very careful about casting big spells, because if you spend more than 2 mana, well, you're lacking mana the next turn. You can find an example deck list in the description that includes some cards I didn't talk about. Please remember though that this is not a polish 99, but instead meant as a starting point for you to start brewing. This video was inspired by my journey through Magic's oldest sets. The cards showcased here are only a fraction of the amazing forgotten designs of early Magic that I rediscovered. If you think you'd enjoy a separate series where I showcase some underplayed cards from older sets, let me know in the comments. Anyways, be kind to yourself and others. Goodbye.